Hello friends, welcome to this video. Today I'm gonna be building my gaming rig and placing the motherboard and all the components inside the case. If you want to see this process happening from the beginning, you can check my previous videos that you see there on my channel. I'm gonna be using the Codemaster H500M case. This is the highest end H500 case, and as you can see, it has panels, glass panels all around. I'm gonna move it on here. This is the back of the case, and it's very nice. The only color that is available at this moment is black. You see it also has a glass panel on the back. That's different from the H500P and the standard H500. It also came with an optional glass panel for the front, but I'm gonna leave the mesh because I prefer airflow instead of having here also a glass panel. For this rig we're gonna build it with a radiator 360mm on the top. That's the maximum it can support, and that's more than enough for this rig. And we're gonna put the motherboard that already has the CPU, RAM, an M.2 SSD, hard drive, and all the components. And also I have a 1000 watts EVGA power supply 80+ certified that I'm gonna be installing in this computer. So it's gonna be fun. So let's just get to work. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take down these two panels, the one on the right and the left. To do that, I'm just gonna use a regular screwdriver, and as you can see here, it has like a regular screw that you need to put and turn, and then the panel comes out. I'm gonna do that for both panels. So taking off the glass panels was easy. The one on the back or on the opposite side, on this side, was a little stuck, so I had to pull it up. So you can see I had a slight difficulty. All you have to do is really unscrew, pull up away, and then pull up. And I just placed the glass in a safe place. And the next step we're going to do is I'm going to remove this panel, since I'm already in this side of the case. This panel is for cable management, and it's supposed to hide all your cables that are routed from behind your motherboard and your components on the front. All the H500 cases have this, but in this case of the H500M, where you have a glass panel here, so this is exposed, you really need to, I really suggest that you use this panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it, so we can then route our cables more easily. So the next step is to install the motherboard into the case. The first thing we need to get is from the Codemaster case, the case that came with the case that has all the screws and stuff. You open that little package, and then you need to put apart all the little pins that are like this. They are like pegs, and inside we're meant to place the screw in. And there are about 9 of this. Okay, actually there are 6. There are like 8, and there are 2 that are already installed in the motherboard. As you can see, there is one here already installed and one here too. This little thing, is the only silver tool inside the bag. Is the tool that we're gonna use to screw this into the case. So you put this inside this, okay, and then you place it on the motherboard and you screw it here. So these are gonna be the support, or the base that will support our motherboard in the case. So we are going to proceed to put this in. Another thing you need to know is that depending on your motherboard, you will have to put this in different locations. So in this case, I have a nice text here that's telling me that if I have an eATX, that is E marked on the case. If I have an ATX, it will be marked as with an A, micro ATX is M, and mini ITX is I. So wherever you see the holes that have any of these letters, it will correspond to the holes in your motherboard. So I have an ATX, so I had to put the specs in all the holes that have an A marked. So here, here, here is already one, here, etc. So I'm gonna proceed and do that for my ATX board. So before putting the motherboard inside the case, it seems that it may be wise to remove this panel here on the front. And here's where the hard drives, the standard hard drives, will be installed. So I want to take this off first, so I have more room to maneuver when I put the motherboard, and also it's going to be easier for me to install the hard drives, you know, without having to bump into my motherboard. So that's what we're going to do. This seems that this panel is put together by just 2 screws here, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off. So it turns out there is also 2 screws on the back here that has to be removed. One I already took it out, okay, and the other one needs to be removed. It's more precisely is this one right here, okay, and then this counterpart here. I just took that out, so I just need to take this out, and then the panel will go. Alright, so I just placed the motherboard inside the case, making sure that the little pegs align with these 3 holes, okay, in the motherboard. So they do, as you can see, they do. So the only thing that is left to do is to put the screws, so to bolt it into place. So the case comes with a lot of these screws that are the ones that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to proceed and put the 9 screws here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna connect all the front panel cables that came with the case to the motherboard. There is a few cables here to connect. There are two USB 3 cables for the 4 USB ports on the front panel. So each of these provides two USB 3.0 slots. My motherboard only has one front panel USB 3 slot, so I'm gonna have to buy a transformer or an adapter to connect to the other USB 3 connector, so I can, you know, have 4 ports, but they are not gonna be all USB 3, so only 2 of them will be. But that's the case on my specific motherboard. If you have a motherboard that has 2 connectors, then you can get the 4 slots that are in the front of the case. Now this is also there's another cable here, which is the audio cable. It's clearly marked as HD audio. That goes also into the motherboard. There is also a USB-C connector here, so that also goes into the motherboard if your motherboard accepts USB-C type, and that's because this Cooler Master case has a USB-C port on the front, and we're gonna connect that. And finally we have these 3, well, actually 4 little connectors. These are for the input output of the front of the case too. They're for the power button and the hard drive LED light, and also you will notice that there is no reset. So the case has a reset button on the front, but there is no reset cable here. So at the beginning I was thinking the case was missing it. So after a lot of looking and research, I found that actually it does come with the reset cable, but what happens is that it's connected to the RGB controller that this case has, and it's behind this panel. So I'm gonna remove this panel to show you the RGB or the lights of the fans and the controller that this case comes with, and the reset button is actually connected to that board, so you can control the lights of the 2 fans and the different components through the reset button. So although we will lose that functionality of resetting the computer, if we leave it like this, it's kind of pretty cool to be able to control the lights using the front panel. If you don't like it, you can disconnect that reset pin and put it in the motherboard, but then you won't be able to control the lights from the front panel. There is also an option to connect the controller to the motherboard and then control the lights that way, but from what I have read, there is still no software that do that, and it would depend, actually it will depend on your motherboard. Your motherboard may be able to control it. So for now, I think I'm gonna leave the reset in the controller. So what I'm gonna do now is open this panel and I'll show it to you. So this is the RGB controller that can control the LEDs from different components, specifically from the 2 front panels. I'm assuming that the 2 front panels are already connected to this controller, but also you see this is the reset button that I was talking to you about. It's connected to this controller instead of the motherboard, so we can control it using the reset button on the front. So if you want to connect more stuff or more RGB devices, you can do it. There is an additional connector here that you can use, and also there is an USB mini USB port here that is used we are going to connect to the motherboard, and that is if we download the software from Cooler Masters, we will be able to control the controller. And to give power to this controller, we need to connect a SATA cable here, and we're gonna be doing that in just a few minutes. So this is the controller that this case comes with. Alright, so I connected the USB 3 to the connector here and routed the cable through here. It has a little bulge here, but there's nothing that really I can do about that. And this is the USB-C connector port. Now be careful with when you're connecting this. The USB 3.0 has a little like a little plastic thing on the middle that you had to align to the connector, so that's your way to know which side you had to put it. And the USB-C type is a little trickier. What you see that it will have a little empty space, okay, in one of the sides, so it will not be a continuous piece of plastic on one of the sides. So you have to align that to the that's the way for you to guide yourself, to guide it into the slot here on the motherboard. Now I'm going to proceed to connect this front panel switches, and I could just connect this directly. The slot for this is this one. It's clearly marked here with different colors. But if not, the motherboard, I'm not sure, I think, no, it was the case. The case comes with this adapter. You can see I'm trying to zoom here. Okay, and this adapter, you can place things according to the diagram that is here on the exterior part, and then connect this to the device. So I'm gonna maybe use the adapter, seems to be the easiest part, and that's it. Alright guys, so I installed the front panel header, you know, and I just did it without the provided plastic adapter, and I was having a lot of problems with this thing, trying to get the pins inside to match exactly the holes, so it was much easier to just put it there. The only thing is that you need the guide to know which pin to connect what, and for that just go to your motherboard, and you see it here. I have my motherboard has the guide of the pins and what each of the pins do and what you should connect in each of the pins. So the next thing I connected was the HD audio cable. That went pretty smoothly. It goes only in one way, so you have to be careful. There is a pin that is missing on the bottom side, so it's like blank, and that's your guideline to align it to the connector on your motherboard. I routed that cable through this hole here, so it came really very nicely right into where it needed to be. The next thing I'm gonna do is I think I need to install the power supply. So I'm gonna put the power supply into the case. The power supply that I bought, it's 1000 watts EVGA, okay, it's 80 plus gold certified. This is a really nice power supply, okay, and we're gonna put it in here. So in order to do that, I believe the first thing we need to do is remove these screws here and then just slide it into position. So let's do it. One thing I noticed is if I just slide the power supply in here, I'm not going to have clear access to the connectors here that the power supply has. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove okay, this front panel here, and then I will have clear access to the power supply. So guess what? It turned out that it's not that easy to take that panel off. I took a screw here and the one in front, but there's still these two things that need to be lifted with a lot of force, and I don't want to do it because I already have my motherboard very close to this panel. So I'm gonna leave it there. The solution I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pre-connect the things that I need in the power supply, and then I'm gonna slide it and put the cables through the back of the panel. So that's the plan. So let's see what happens. Alright, so I connected all the necessary plugs into the power supply. So I have two VGA or graphic card connectors plugged in. I'm using the RTX 2080, so I'm planning on using both to supply power to it. The manual says you can use only one, but since that graphic card is really a monster, I'm gonna provide two to it. Also, the CPU, okay, I attach one connector for the CPU. As you can see in the motherboard, most motherboards will have an 8-pin connector, okay. I'm gonna show it to you here. So as you can see, this is it. Most motherboards will have an 8-pin connector, okay, but the gaming ones have also a 4-pin on the left. So after reading a little bit, I heard that extra 4-pin is if you really want to push your CPU to the max all the time for extreme overclocking and to give some extra power to the CPU. But if you just use your CPU at stock most of the time, or you're just too light overclocking, then just having it in the 8-pin port is enough power for most CPUs. I'm using the i9 9900K, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna overclock it or not, but I think it should be fine with just one pin. If not, well, I need to buy an extra connector there. But for now, I think that will do. Now, in addition to that, I connected three SATA cables, 1, 2, 3, or three, let's say, placeholders, because each of these SATA connectors provides you with you can connect 4 devices. The problem is that my devices will be scattered around the case, so I'm gonna add some one hard drive here, and then I'm gonna put a solid state drive somewhere else, and so that will be 1 and 2, and then I need another one to reach the RGB controller. Remember that had a SATA power connector too, so I just put 3 of them just to be safe, okay, and if I don't need it, well, then I can disconnect it later. And that's it. Just 2 for the RTX graphic card, 1 for the CPU, and 3 for the SATA connectors for hard drives and the controller. Oh, by the way, these are really easy to install. All you have to do is really foolproof. You can make a mistake. They have like a level, you know, on one of the sides, so you have to align the level to the hole here, so it will adjust. So very simple. I'm gonna show it to you. So you see this one, it has this level here, so this should be aligned so the hole is on the bottom, and that's pretty much it. By the way, this power supply is full. It's a half modular. There are 3 kinds of power supplies. There is a not modular, fully modular, and half modular. The half modular has this cable here, the main cable for the to attach to the motherboard, already attached to the power supply, and the rest is everything is, you know, detachable, and you can attach it if you want it. The full modular, you know, don't have this attached, so you need to connect it. And the not modular ones, they have everything already attached. So of course the modular and half modulars are the most expensive, because it gives you more flexibility in terms of how many cables you need and how many cables you will have on the back of your computer. So the next thing we're gonna do is to install the hard drives. I have a regular, hard drive, magnetic, and I also have a solid state drive that I pulled from another system. And I'm gonna put them both in here. I was thinking about putting the SSD maybe here, or you can also put it on the back, like like this. I mean, that's kind of cool, but I thought maybe I should just put them both together so I can just use one of those SATA cables instead of two, because I will need to rewire it in different places. So, and besides, maybe later on I'm gonna buy more solid state drives, and then I will have the opportunity to put them in those places. So for that, I'm gonna reuse a bracket, a mounting bracket that came with my solid state drive, and all you have to do is just you pull this out like this. Okay, this is very easy to pull off. You pull this trace here, and this is for a regular hard drive, and you can put the screws here. But if you want to put a solid state drive, normally the drives come with this bracket. You just put it in there, so these pins, these plastic pins, just enter in the holes that you have here on the sides. Very, very simple to do, and once you have that, then you can mount your SSD drive inside that bracket and put it there, and problem solved. Of course, this case is beautiful for its convenience to put SSD drive. So if you want to put it somewhere else, all you have to do is you get this and you put some little pins that come with the case, and you push them in, and so you will have like 4 legs for your SSD, and then you just push into these holes that are here, made specifically for solid state drives. But this is not going to be the case. I'm just going to put it there for convenience. So I'm going to get to work and put the hard drives, and then connect the the SATA connectors, and also the ones that goes to the motherboard. So I just plugged in the main motherboard power source. It's this big guy here, and I routed through this middle entrance here, and it was good, but it was a little struggle to put that in there firmly. The only thing you have to be careful about is to put it in the right direction, and it will be with this level, you know, there is like a level facing outwards from the board. So I attached that, and I had to also remove the USB 3.0 connector too in order for this big guy to pass through. I tried to pass it through this hole here, but it didn't look that good. So this hole, the middle one, was really the best option for both the USB and the power connector. I also connected the cable for the CPU power, and that was easy to route. I just put it on the top. There is a top slot that you see there, an opening. So what I did is I took out there is a panel here, a plastic panel, and that stays like this attached. You saw it before. So this comes out without any screws. You just pull it out and it pops out, and it's for cable management. So I want to hide this partially this CPU power cable, so I will not put this panel on top of it. Alright, so I'm gonna continue putting more cables, and the next thing I'm gonna do is probably put the controller SATA cable and the hard drives also cables. So installing the hard drives from behind once they were already in their cradle was not a good idea. It was difficult to connect the adapters to the hard drives. So what I did is I took them out, just passed the cables through the hole and just plugged them in. So that's what I recommend you to do too also. And now I'm already all set. All I have to do is connect them to the power supply and to the motherboard. So my motherboard has this two types of SATA cables, you know, the ones that are just straight like this, and another ones that are like in an L. So they're supposed to be easier to connect, okay, to the motherboard, but I found actually that was the opposite effect for me. It was more difficult to do that. So I just went back to the straight ones. And also, you know, I connected, I'll just show you this. I connected that, you know, the SATA to here. It doesn't really matter in which ports you connected, so I believe. So I just put it where it was more convenient, and I routed the cables. These are the two. So I put one behind the other, so it's less noticeable. And that's it. So the next thing I'm gonna do is show you. I want to show you the SATA connection to the RGB controller. Okay. For this, I used another cable that went to the motherboard and just placed it in there. As my camera is getting a little out of focus, so I apologize for that. And that's it. I just push it in, and I push it in this way so most of the excess will be tucked inside this case. One more thing before I forget, I also connected the USB, the micro USB connector here to this controller. As you can see, the cable here, you just plug it in there. It's a little difficult. It doesn't have a lot of room, you know, to maneuver there, but you just have to apply some force and bend the cable a little bit, and then that goes to the connector of the motherboard in the USB. I put it in the USB 2.0 here, and I routed the cable from this hole there. And I'm planning to put on this second USB port, I'm gonna connect my two USB slots that are in the front, because like I said before, my motherboard only has one USB 3 connector that supports two USB ports, so I need to use the other two. Next thing I'm gonna connect is this big rear fan. Okay, it's a 3-pin connector, and I think all of my fans are 4-pin. That means this guy's speed is gonna be constant. You know, the 4-pin connectors allow you to regulate the speed of the fans. The 3 does not, if I'm not mistaken, but it doesn't really matter. And I mean, I have different places where I could put this, but I'm gonna put it below. I think it's the best place, although it's gonna be a little bit difficult to route the cable, especially since it's really not that long. So I'm gonna do that now, and then I come back to you. So I just discovered that my CPU had a tiny fan connector all the way up there, which is probably meant for this fan because it's very close to it. So what I did is I rerouted the cable from the bottom all the way here, so I tuck in, you can't see it. You still see it here, and then I put it there. It was really difficult to put it there. I needed to use a flat screwdriver to actually, once I align the pins in there, to push it in because my fingers couldn't do the job. It's a very small hole there. So be careful when you do that. You don't want to bend any of the pins, and you want to hear that snap that happens when you push one of these connectors. So something I want to mention is that the two big fans, the 200mm fans on the case, are already pre-connected to this RGB controller, and as you can see it here, normally this RGB controller has two expansion or two connections for LEDs, so and the first port is taken by the fans, and but if not, you know, the manual it really does a descriptive job of telling you how to connect that. That's already pre-connected with my case, so it came like that, so I'm not gonna need to touch it. Alright, so the time has come for me to install the radiator. I'm using here a Corsair, okay, H150i Pro. It's a 3-fan radiator that should be sufficient to cool the i9 9900K beast of CPU that we have installed. So I'm gonna put these fans, first I'm gonna put the radiator on the top. That is the most recommended place to put it, and also kind of the only one if I don't want to remove these big fans on the front, or you know, put it somewhere else. So and also I'm gonna make these fans push air out, so they're gonna face up and they're gonna push air out of the case. So our airflow is going to be air coming from the two big fans, and then air leaving from the back fan and the radiator 3 fans on the top. That is supposed to be the best way to add it, according to different videos and different websites I've read about this case and the location for the radiator. That will give us the coolest temperatures for our CPU and GPU. So I'm going to proceed doing that. I also have to mount the bracket into the motherboard. Some motherboards already have that installed for us, but this one doesn't. So we're going to have to get to work and do that. As I'm ready to connect this plate here to the front, I already put the plastic one, the support base on the back. I need to choose which of the screws are going to be added, which of these attachments, okay? So the manual says if your motherboard is one of the older, the EVGA 1115X through 1366, then you use the number B, which is this one. Okay, this one with the double thing, you know, it's like has these two sides that are equal length. But if you have a newer motherboard, the ones that are the LGA 2011 to 2011-3 or 2066, then you need to use this one. The one that has one side is different from the other. Mine is older, so I'm gonna have to use this ones. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw that plate into the motherboard. So I installed the back plate and the little pins that go to it, but it has a lot of jiggling, you see, when I move it. So it's impossible to tie them up. So I thought maybe something is wrong, and I had to do some research, like many times I have done for this case. It has been really an adventure, and I read that that is normal and it will disappear. That flush, jiggling will disappear once we screw these thumb screws, these big ones here. So that jiggling apparently is normal, and the back plate will be flushed once we tighten that up. I really hope that's the case, because if not, it's gonna be a real problem. So we'll see. So the configuration I have chosen is to have the fans on top of the plate and then pulling out air, so really like exhausts. And then we're gonna put our radiator here. And I can really put both the radiator and the fan here. There is not enough space, really, it will really go down too much down. So I'm gonna do this configuration. So the first thing you want to do is to position the fans correctly so that the cables can be placed inside this central hole here, because then we're gonna have to connect it down to the radiator. So put them flush like this, and then you want to have these long screws that came with the radiator and put it in each of these holes. Each fan has 4 of this, so you have to put in there, okay? And after that, we're gonna screw the radiator here on the bottom, okay, to our fans. Right, so I have bolted the 3 fans in this position to the radiator on the bottom here, and it was a little bit, well, it was not hard. The difficult part was to align the fans and the radiator to the 2 rails that are here. Okay, and after that you just screw the screws on top. I also had to move things a little bit in terms of these cables here, so this you see still it wouldn't interfere, okay, with the radiator. And that's pretty much it. Now the next step is gonna be to connect, you know, the main part of the radiator into the CPU and then the cable connections. Oh, also I forgot to tell you that this should go, you see, on the right. So the 2 tubes that come should be on the right of the case, so away from everything else. And then you're gonna put this into the CPU. And that's it. We installed the pump into the CPU. I am happy to say that as you can see, I kind of touched it to see if it had paste, and it does have thermal paste applied to it. Although technically you won't need thermal paste with the i9 9900K, but you know, an extra layer is always good. So and I also can confirm that jiggling, or that, you know, space that was between the back support and the front one is gone. So it's very flushed, it's very tight, so nothing moves there. So the reports actually that I read were accurate, so that's good. All right, so we are ready to proceed to connect these cables over here. So now what I have to do is plug these cables from the pump and the radiator. So this is a SATA to give power to it, so I just need to plug it into any SATA connection that I have on the back. This one is a 3-pin also power connector, that this goes attached to the CPU fan connector on the top of the board. And then I had to attach the 3 fan 4-pin connectors into here. Actually there are 3 pins, but I don't remember if there are 3 or 4, let's see. So there are 4. So attach the 3 fans 4 pins into each of these guys here. Also, the the instructions are telling me to attach a USB cable from the pump here, okay, to the an available USB 2.0 port on the motherboard. I only have two here, and one I installed I connected the RGB controller, and the other one I have it planned to have two additional USB ports on the front, so those two are not going to be dead since I only have one USB 3 port. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to disconnect I may disconnect the one from the controller, okay, to put the pump one, but I have to check out exactly what does that USB connection does for the pump. Maybe it regulates the RGBs of the pump, I'm not sure. So I'm gonna check that out and then I'm gonna get back to you. So it turns out that the USB cable controls, allows Corsair software to control aspects of the pump. So I think that's maybe more important than the USB connection to the RGB controller, because I think I will be able to control the lights by using the reset button, and I don't need also to control the lights using the software. So for that, I think I'm gonna unplug, okay, the USB connection to the RGB controller, and then plug the one in the for the pump. So guys, the pump is installed. You know, I did everything. I also put the USB cable here that is routed through the hole on the top, and then it goes all the way down to the USB port. All the fans are connected, and also the CPU power fan also has been connected. I had to do some rerouting in terms of cables because I didn't really like to see cables hanging too much. There's still this cable hanging here from the this is the CPU power, okay, to the CPU fan, I'm sorry, that I had to tie it up to this cable here, but not too bad, not too bad. The rerouting was mostly done here. Instead of using this hole on the case to put the cables of the fans, what I did is I used the fans on each of the two edges, okay, or I used those holes in the two edges to route the cables of the fans in there. And then what I did is I pulled the main fan cable from the pump all the way here to the upper layer, and then I connected it here in this way. So it works, it looks better, the cables are not hanging as much. So what I need to do now is to fix this mess here of cables, to tie everything up, and then I will get back to you. So the time to install my graphic card has come. The RTX 2080 by EVGA. I bought this card because it's supposed to be cooler or run cooler than the original by NVIDIA and others. So what I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna install it in the PCIe 16 slot, which is this one, the first one here, silver. So I had to remove two of these panels first, and then we're gonna insert the card and make all the connections that are needed. Alright guys, so after a few attempts of installing the GeForce RTX into my motherboard and trying to tape it at the same time, I just couldn't do it. So I had to stop the video and bring the case closer to me so I can, you know, manipulate this better. This card is a very heavy video card, so I needed two hands, and also I needed to be really close to the board. So it's very simple. You unscrew two of these side panels, as I told you before, and then you have to unlock a clasp that is very similar to the RAM clasp, or you know, plastic holder, and you open that up, and then you simply push the video card into the slot until it snaps in. It snaps really nicely in. There is no sagging, although I have an optional tool for this board to give support to the board, which I may use just to give it extra support, but it doesn't really sag or move at all. So the next thing I'm gonna do is put that in and also connect the power. This is the power, and also connect the rest of the connections that I have to do. Alright guys, we're almost at the end. I connected the two EVGA connectors here. This GeForce RTX 2080 has two. It has one 6-pin on the left and one 8-pin on the right. My power supply had only had only connectors that were 6 plus 2. So what I did is I just connected the 6 plus 2 to the right, and then I just removed the 2 and put it away. So I kind of detach it from the cable and push it back up in the back of the motherboard, and that is safe to do. Alright, so I only have to now tie up all the cables and we are almost done. Alright guys, I finished doing the cable management. It was, needless to say, a painful job to try to squeeze these panels in there with all the cables that are behind, but I succeeded. Again, it took a long time. I had to use a lot of cable fasteners and push things really tight. Hopefully nothing happened in there, and but as you can see, it's very neat. There's no cables out and those panels work perfectly. I also put the front panel back, and my lazy Susan is making noise because now the case is really heavy, and you see the interior is looking pretty neat. It's very clean, almost perfect. Maybe I could just tie this up here a little bit, but besides that, it's really looking great. In the last segment, I'm gonna turn it on. Hopefully everything will work, and see how the LEDs work, and that's it. Well guys, here it is, the system installed. There were some hiccups that I may create another video to comment about later on, but everything is working perfectly. The computer is really nice, it looks wonderful, and this is the interior. I don't have a lot of LED lights in there. I only have the the cooler, but it looks pretty amazing, and also super fast, and I should say super quiet. Listen, you can't hear anything. In my previous computer, I heard all the fans going on, and in this one there's two huge 200mm fans on the front, 3 on the top from the cooler, and 1 on the back, and I don't really hear anything. So it's way quieter than my previous build. So really nice. And well, I really thank you for watching. I know it has been a long video, and I hope it was useful to you. And if so, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to support this channel. And I'm looking forward to hear your comments. Please let me know what you think about this build or other computers and your experience building computers. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.